Imagine working for like 40 years, saving every spare penny, maximizing your 401k.
Right, doing everything you're supposed to be.
Exactly. You finally reach the finish line of your career and you think you're safe, but then you systematically lose $273,000 in your first 30 months of freedom.
It is a staggering number. And the scary part is it happens all the time.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're getting into today.
Oh.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a huge stack of financial planning case studies, actuarial data, behavioral psychology research.
It's a lot of material.
It really is. And it outlines exactly how this wealth destruction happens. We're taking a fascinating and frankly kind of terrifying look into what our sources call the retirement showroom.
Yes, the retirement showroom. It's a perfect phrase.
Our mission for this deep dive is to equip you, the listener, with the psychological armor you need to protect the wealth that you've literally spent decades building.
And it's such a vital mission because the destruction of that wealth, it rarely happens through sheer recklessness. I mean, people aren't just going to Vegas.
Right, they aren't putting their life savings on black.
No, not at all. To understand how a rational, financially prudent person can lose $250,000 so fast, we have to look at the psychological operating system that you've been running for your entire adult life.
Which is basically just delayed gratification.
Exactly. For 40 years, your financial life has been governed by this program. You train yourself to think in decades rather than days.
You definitely build a specific neural pathway for it. Like every time you walked past a beautiful car.
Or saw a listing for a second home.
Yeah, or considered some luxury vacation. You checked your retirement goals, you checked the math, and you just said, well, not yet.
Right. You told yourself the reward comes later. And you built that reflex so deeply into your psyche that it just became your default state of being.
And then suddenly you hit 65.
Boom. The rules change.
Literally overnight. On the exact day you retire, the world suddenly gives you permission to flip the script. The saving chapter is over, and society taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, time to enjoy it.
You earned this.
Yeah, you earned this. But the shock of finally saying yes after 40 years of not yet, I mean, it's completely overwhelming.
It is, because your brain has absolutely no calibration for what yes should actually look like. You have never practiced saying yes at all before.
And that sudden lack of calibration, that's the exact vulnerability that the retirement showroom is built to exploit.
Precisely. That term, the showroom, is the central metaphor of our source material. The moment you stop working, the world realizes you have a lump sum of cash.
And a newfound psychological vulnerability. The doors fly open.
They really do. Category of salesperson, from boat dealers to financial advisors, they know you are walking into their territory with your guard totally down.
It's like holding your breath for 40 years, finally gasping for air, and finding yourself in a room full of people selling premium oxygen. I mean, are these people just being greedy, or are the buyers being stupid?
That's the thing. It's actually neither. It's important to clarify that this isn't necessarily about malicious greed or stupidity.
Okay, so what is it then?
What the sources reveal is a structurally designed trap. It exploits a specific life transition. The entire environment is optimized for one single purpose.
Which is making you feel, on the day of purchase, that this is just a totally reasonable and deserved reward.
Everything looks perfectly reasonable on day one in the showroom.
Right, it's like stepping into a perfectly engineered environment where critical thinking is just systematically disarmed. Every lighting choice, every sales pitch.
Every glossy brochure.
Yeah, it's all designed to bypass the analytical part of your brain and appeal directly to that pent-up desire. You want to believe the dream they're selling because, well, you've been waiting for it your whole life.
Which is why we really need to examine the very first thing most people buy when they enter this showroom.
Oh boy, here we go.
We have to look at the biggest, most culturally ingrained symbol of retirement: real estate. Specifically, the vacation home dream.
This one feels so personal for so many people. I mean, we're talking about the lake house, the condo in the desert, the cottage on the coast.
The romanticized vision.
Right. You picture the grandkids running around in the summer, having quiet mornings with a cup of coffee, looking out over the water. You're finally buying the backdrop for the version of yourself you always planned to be.
The emotional appeal is undeniable. But let's look at the harsh mathematical reality underlying that dream.
Let's do it.
According to the data, the median price of a vacation home in America recently crossed the $500,000 mark.
$500,000 just to get the keys.
Yes, But based on our sources, the purchase price is almost irrelevant compared to the carrying costs.
Hmm.
The purchase price is really just the entry fee.
Wait, really? The true trap is what it costs to simply hold the asset.
Exactly. Property taxes, associations, specialized insurance for secondary properties, ongoing maintenance, year-round utilities.
It ends fast.
These carry an average annual cost of between 3 and 5% of the home's total value.
Let's ground that in reality for a second. If you buy that median $100,000 property, 3 to 5% means you are burning between $15,000 and $25,000 every single year.
Every single
You are spending a full of average security payment just to keep a house controlled and legally compliant.
And you are paying that regardless of whether you occupy property for 3 months or 3 days.
Wow.
But the financial drain is only an equation. The real silent killer here, the mechanism that turns this from a luxury into a profound mistake, is the usage rate.
Right, because nobody buys a vacation home planning to leave it empty.
We chronically overproject our own future energy levels, and we overproject the availability of our extended family.
Oh, for sure. The sources provide a highly detailed case study on this, right? The couple in the Ozarks.
Yes, a retired couple in their mid-60s. They bought a lake house in the Ozarks for $480,000. They built a financial model, assuming they would use it every other weekend.
2 weekends a month. I mean, when you're retired, that sounds entirely doable.
In year 1, the novelty was high. They went 11 times. It wasn't the 26 times they projected, but it felt like a success.
Okay, 11 times isn't terrible.
But in year 2, they went 7 times. By year 3, 4 times.
Oh, man, you can almost map the enthusiasm fading as reality sets in.
It wasn't just a loss of enthusiasm, though. Life physically intervened. By year 4, one of the spouses required knee surgery.
Ouch.
Yeah, which made the 3-hour drive genuinely painful. Simultaneously, their grandkids reached an age where weekends were entirely consumed by travel sports leagues.
Oh, travel sports. That'll ruin any family gathering plan.
Completely. The family couldn't visit. So in year 4, they used the lake house exactly twice.
Twice. Twice out of 52 weekends. They are paying that massive carrying cost for maybe 4 or 5 nights of actual use.
By year 6, the psychological burden of owning this unused asset outweighed the dream. They finally capitulated and sold the property.
Did they at least get their money back?
Unfortunately, no. Due to a slight market cooling in their specific area, they sold it at a $40,000 loss on the purchase price.
Oof.
But when you factor in the $18,000 a year they paid in carrying costs over those 6 years.
Wait, let me do the math. 6 years times 18 grand. That is over $100,000 in maintenance and taxes. Plus the $40,000 capital loss. They vaporize $148,000 of their retirement nest egg.
For partial, steadily declining access to a property.
That's a huge loss.
It is. Our actuarial sources note that for the cost of their carrying fees alone, they could have rented a premium, fully staffed lakefront property for $4,000 a week, multiple times a year, completely risk-free.
Man, in the showroom, the lake house looked like an investment in family memory making. But mathematically, they bought a massive liability.
Exactly.
And that psychological blind spot doesn't just stop at the vacation home, though. It actually infects the primary residence, too. Let's talk about the irony of downsizing.
This is one of the most counterintuitive traps in the data. The conventional wisdom is that upon retirement, you sell the 5-bedroom family home where you raise your children and you buy something smaller.
Something more manageable. But the showroom psychology hijacks the process, doesn't it?
It really does. Retirees start shopping, and instead of buying for the reality of their daily lives, they start buying for an imagined, highly produced version of retirement.
Like they're casting a movie about their own life.
Right. They tell the real estate agent, well, we need a couple of guest rooms for when the kids bring the grandchildren, and I finally have time to cook, so we need a massive chef-grade kitchen.
Oh, and I've always wanted a formal dining room for hosting dinner parties.
Exactly. And suddenly, the responsible downsize quietly morphs into a lateral move. They end up selling a 3,000 square foot house and buying a brand new 4,000 square foot house.
That's not downsizing at all.
No, they purchase a home for a fantasy.
Yeah.
The problem is that they have to live in the reality of a Tuesday in January, 5 years into retirement.
A Tuesday in January. I love that framing. Because on a Tuesday in January, there are no grandkids visiting. There is no massive dinner party.
There are just 2 people rattling around in 4,000 square feet. They're paying higher property taxes, dealing with more exterior maintenance than they can comfortably handle.
And vacuuming empty guest rooms every 2 weeks because nobody ever sets foot in them, they essentially become part-time janitors for their own architectural fantasies.
And this leads to a very predictable, highly expensive secondary crisis. Fast forward 15 years. This couple is now 78 years old. The massive house with the grand staircase is no longer just annoying to clean. It is a genuine physical hazard. Proximity to specialized medical care suddenly becomes their primary concern,
So they are forced to actually downsize a decade and a half later than they should have.
which means they are absorbing double the transaction costs. They pay real estate agent commissions, staging costs, and closing fees all over again.
Double the moving expenses.
Yes. And they undergo the massive physical and emotional disruption of relocating in their late 70s, all because they refused to buy a house that fit their actual daily routine at 65.
It's an incredibly expensive lesson in self-awareness. But let's scale this real estate conversation up a level because our sources highlight another massive trap.
Moving to the wrong state.
Right, relocating across state lines entirely for tax purposes. We are talking about the exodus to places like Florida or Nevada. Now, I have to push back here. Objectively speaking, Florida has zero state income tax. If I am a retiree drawing down a large investment portfolio, keeping 5 to 8% more of my own money right off the bat just seems mathematically bulletproof. How is moving to a tax haven a trap?
The lack of a state income tax is a legitimate and powerful financial tailwind. The trap is not the tax code itself. The trap is making a major geographic relocation based entirely on reading a tax brochure.
While ignoring everything else.
Exactly. Remaining completely blind to the localized structural costs of living in that state.
Okay, so what kind of localized costs are wiping out an income tax advantage?
Let's look closely at Florida, as it is the most common destination in our case studies. Retirees model their budgets expecting massive savings, but they fail to account for the property insurance crisis.
Oh, the hurricanes.
Yes. Following several devastating hurricane seasons, the reinsurance market, the insurance for insurance companies, has completely repriced the risk of living in Florida. Major insurers have exited the market entirely. Those that remain have spiked annual homeowners' premiums 40 to 80% in many zip codes just in the last few years alone.
So the thousands of dollars you save by not paying state income tax are instantly diverted to an insurance conglomerate just to protect the physical structure of your house.
Precisely. But the trap goes even deeper into local tax law. Florida utilizes a system called the homestead exemption, combined with the Save Our Homes assessment limitation.
Wait, explain the mechanics of that. I've heard of it, but how does that punish a newcomer?
So for longtime residents, this legally caps the amount their assessed property value can increase for tax purposes each year, usually at 3% or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower.
Okay, makes sense for the locals.
But when you buy a house in Florida, the assessed value resets to the current fair market value on the new deed. The previous owner may have lived there for 20 years, enjoying a capped, artificially low tax bill.
Oh, I see where this is going.
When you purchase the home at today's inflated prices, your tax basis resets entirely. Retirees often look at the previous owner's tax history and assume that will be their burden. They receive a catastrophic shock in year 2 when the new uncapped assessment arrives.
That is a brilliant and terrifying detail. You are essentially subsidizing the tax breaks of the people who have lived there for decades.
Add to that the environmental realities. New arrivals routinely fail to accurately model the climate.
The heat.
Yes. The cost of running a massive air conditioning system in a Florida home from May through October creates a utility bill that shatters the projected budgets of retirees, especially those who build financial models based on a mild Midwestern or Northeastern climate zone.
So in the showroom, Florida is all palm trees, golf courses, and tax savings. But the reality is dense insurance paperwork, a reset property tax burden, and an incredibly expensive daily battle with humidity.
It perfectly illustrates how focusing on one single metric like income tax blinds you to the all-in cost of a decision.
Absolutely. And that concept of the all-in cost provides a perfect transition from the real estate foundation to the things we put inside and around that real estate. We move from the homes you buy to the depreciating assets.
The toys.
Right. This is the part of the showroom where things get really shiny. If you've bought the house, now you need to fill the driveway and the marina. Let's talk about buying the image. And there is no greater symbol of this than the boat.
We all know the classic joke about boats. What are the 2 happiest days of boat owner's life?
The day they purchased the boat and the day they finally managed to sell it. It's a cliche because it is universally true. But let's look at the actual mechanics of why it's true based on our data.
Let's examine a standard 30-foot recreational cruiser. A retiree might spend between $80,000 and $200,000 to acquire it.
Which is a huge chunk of change.
But just like the vacation home, the purchase price is merely the initiation fee. The structural reality of a boat is that it sits in a corrosive environment, water, 24 hours a day.
Mother Nature is actively trying to destroy it from the moment you put it in the marina.
Exactly. Which means the carrying costs are relentless. Annual slip fees, hull cleaning, engine maintenance, winterization, specialized marine fuel, registration, and insurance.
That's a long list.
Actuarial models suggest you must budget roughly 10% of the initial purchase price every single year just to maintain the asset.
10%. So on a $150,000 boat, you are bleeding $15,000 a year minimum.
Between $8,000 and $20,000 annually, depending on the vessel. Now, pair that carrying cost with the utilization data. The American Boating Association actually tracks this.
What do they say?
They estimate that the average recreational owner uses their boat exactly 11 days per year.
11 days. Oh my gosh. Let's do the math on the implications of that. If you are paying $15,000 a year in maintenance and you go out 11 times, you are paying over $1,300 per outing.
And that doesn't even account for the brutal depreciation of the boat's actual value.
That is just throwing money down the drain.
The source material actually includes a remarkably candid quote from a marina operator. He noted that while his best customers are the ones who buy boats, his most reliable and profitable customers are the ones who stop showing up altogether, but continue to blindly pay the monthly slip fees.
Because at a certain point, it is psychologically easier to just put the slip fee on autopay than to admit the dream is dead, face the depreciation, and deal with the overwhelming hassle of trying to sell a used boat.
It is the paralysis of a sunk cost.
That is dark. Really dark.
And this exact same dynamic plays out on land with the recreational vehicle.
The RV, the lure of the open road, I have to admit, I completely understand the psychological pull of this one.
It's very appealing.
You walk into a brand new Class M motorhome at a dealership. It has granite countertops, flat screen televisions, a full kitchen, a king-size bed. It sells the ultimate fantasy of freedom. You picture yourself waking up at the base of the Grand Canyon, making coffee, totally untethered from the world.
The showroom experience is impeccably designed to sell that exact fantasy. The operational reality, however, is an exercise in logistical frustration.
How so?
These Class A motorhomes cost between $150,000 and $500,000. They are aerodynamically disastrous, yielding a dismal 6 to 10 miles per gallon of expensive diesel fuel.
And you weren't just pulling over and parking for free on the side of the highway either.
No. Premium RV campgrounds with the necessary water and electrical hookups now charge between $60 and $150 per night. You are essentially paying premium hotel rates to park the $500,000 hotel you already purchased.
And then, like a real hotel, there is no maintenance staff when things go wrong.
This is where the fantasy truly fractures.
Mm-hmm.
An RV is essentially a house undergoing a localized earthquake every time it drives down the highway at 65 miles an hour.
That's a great way to put it. Stuff has to break.
Things break constantly. Hydraulic slide-outs jam. Awnings tear. Complex plumbing systems fail. And you cannot simply take a 40-foot motorhome to a local mechanic.
Right, you need a specialized RV repair facility.
And because the industry produced vastly more units during the recent boom than they built service centers to support, repair wait times routinely run 4 to 8 weeks.
Okay, so my mechanistic analogy for this is buying an RV is basically like purchasing a rapidly depreciating mobile house where you are forced to act as your own general contractor while simultaneously being stranded in a gravel lot in Albuquerque for 2 months waiting for a proprietary water pump from Indiana.
That is a brutally accurate assessment of the lifestyle for many.
And you mentioned depreciation earlier. How bad is it?
The RV Industry Association data indicates that most owners keep their units for only 3 to 5 years before getting. A motorhome purchased brand new for $200,000 might fetch $110,000 on the secondary market 4 years later.
You lose $90,000 in equity. Poof, gone. Before you even account for the diesel, the campground fees, or the broken hydraulics.
It is massive wealth destruction for a few weeks of camping.
Which brings us to another vehicle trap. One deeply tied to reclaiming lost, the deferred dream car.
Yeah.
Explore. If you worked in a cubicle for 40 years and you stared at a poster of a Porsche 911 on your wall the entire time, shouldn't you just buy the Porsche? Isn't that the point of having money?
The sources do not advocate for complete asceticism. If a vehicle brings genuine daily joy, it can be a valid purchase. The pitfall identified in the data is the cascade of hidden requirements that come with it.
Like what?
The sports car, for instance, cannot handle winter weather.
Yeah.
If you live in Minnesota, the Porsche cannot be your daily driver in January.
So now I can't just own one car. I need a second practical all-wheel drive SUV.
Exactly. You are now doubling your auto insurance, doubling your annual maintenance, and permanently occupying 2 bays in your garage.
I see.
But the far more dangerous subset of the dream car pitfall is the classic car restoration project. Our sources refer to this as the most expensive hobby in the world, cleverly disguised as a future asset.
Because it appeals to the part of our brain that loves sweat equity, we think we are actually building value.
Yes. The retiree believes they are engaging in a fun, productive hobby that will eventually yield a return. The sources detail a specific case study of a man who purchased a 1969 Chevrolet Camaro at a regional auction.
A classic.
The body was solid, but it lacked a functioning engine. He paid $22,000 for the shell. His plan was to rebuild it himself, outsourcing only the highly technical work.
But honestly, it sounds like the perfect way to spend afternoons in the garage.
3 years later, after countless unpleasant surprises regarding rust, electrical wiring, and sourcing original parts, he had spent $63,000 on components, specialty shop labor, a professional repaint, and a rebuilt transmission.
Okay, let's do the math on this one. So he's 22 grand in on the purchase, plus 63 in parts and labor. His total investment is $85,000. But he owns a fully restored 1969 Camaro. Those things are legendary. Surely it's worth a fortune.
The fair market value for that specific build quality on the open market is approximately $38,000.
Wait, he spent $85,000 to build a $38,000 asset.
He absorbed a $47,000 cash loss. And the most fascinating part of the psychological profile in the source material is that he described the project as a resounding success, simply because the car eventually started and ran.
He lost almost 50 grand and his brain categorized it as a win. That is the insidious power of the showroom mentality. It completely warps your perception of value and return on investment.
It does, which leads perfectly into the ultimate illusions of ownership and belonging, timeshares and country clubs.
Let's start with timeshares, because these are pitched as actual real estate investments.
And that is the foundational lie. Timeshares are not real estate investments. They are prepaid vacation products wrapped in an arcane legal structure designed to mimic the appearance of real estate.
Right.
The crucial mechanism you must understand is that their secondary market resale value is, in almost all cases, zero.
Zero. You literally cannot give them away. I mean, there is a whole cottage industry of lawyers whose entire business model is just helping people legally extract themselves from timeshare contracts because the developers make exiting structurally impossible.
Exactly. The average upfront cost to buy into a timeshare is roughly $22,000. But the true wealth drain is the mandatory annual maintenance fees.
How much are those?
These average $1,000 a year, and they are contractually permitted to increase annually, regardless of whether you ever use the property.
So over a 20-year retirement, you are going to bleed $40,000 to $50,000 in maintenance fees alone on a product that has zero underlying equity.
The sources make a chilling observation about the timeshare industry. You know the high-pressure 3-hour presentation you sit through in exchange for free theme park tickets?
Yeah, everyone knows those.
That presentation is the actual product. The vacation is just the bait used to lock you into a perpetual liability.
That's wild. And what about country clubs? They don't have the same predatory reputation as timeshares.
They don't, but they operate on a similar psychological vulnerability. The desire for an instant community and an elevated status. Initiation fees for private clubs range from $10,000 to upwards of $200,000, entirely non-refundable.
Wow.
And annual dues run from $5,000 to $30,000, plus mandatory food and beverage minimums.
I guess if I am an absolute golf fanatic and I am on the course 3 or 4 days a week, that math might actually make sense.
If it is the genuine center of your social and physical life, it is a lifestyle expense that can be justified. The pitfall identified in the data is buying the membership because it represents the image of what successful retired people are supposed to do.
Oh, I see.
Are you buying access to a golf course you will play 100 times a year? Or are you paying a $50,000 initiation fee to buy an identity?
Well, you'll know within 18 months which one you actually bought, based on how often your clubs leave the garage. Now, up to this point, we've talked about self-indulgence. The boat, the Porsche, the massive house. But the drain on your wealth doesn't always come from a desire for luxury. Often, the most devastating financial wounds are self-inflicted through misguided attempts to be prudent or generous.
Yes.
Let's look at the danger of good intentions. This is section 3 of our deep dive.
This is a deeply emotional area of the source material. It starts with a concept that feels incredibly responsible: pre-sale home renovations.
You are finally ready to downsize, and you look at your kitchen from 1998 and think, I can't list the house looking like this. I need to update it so I can get top dollar on the market.
Feels like a guaranteed investment. But actuarial data from the National Association of Realtors consistently demonstrates that major structural renovations almost never pay for themselves at resale.
Really? Never?
The sources outline a common scenario. A retiree spends $70,000 on a complete kitchen overhaul. Custom cabinets, stone counters, high-end appliances, right before listing the home.
And how much does that $70,000 kitchen actually add to the final appraisal value?
In a standard market, they might recoup $45,000 of that cost in the sale price.
Which means they just took $25,000 of their own retirement capital and handed it to a total stranger as a welcoming gift.
Exactly. The actionable takeaway here is to strictly avoid major structural or customized changes prior to a sale. Only targeted low-cost improvements actually yield a positive return on investment.
Like what?
Fresh, neutral paint, updated lighting fixtures, professional landscaping, basic curb appeal. The individuals who actually make money on pre-sale updates are doing $2,000 cosmetic projects that return $4,000 in value, not $70,000 structural projects that return $45,000.
That is so counterintuitive, but mathematically undeniable. Okay, now we have to tackle what might be the most controversial item on the list.
Family.
Yeah. Gifting too much, too soon to your own family. I am going to push back on behalf of everyone listening right now. Are we supposed to just hoard our money like dragons? If we built this wealth to provide for our families, why is helping our kids a trap?
It is not about becoming a miser, and it is certainly not about a lack of love. It is about understanding the mathematical realities of a 25-year timeline. Specifically, a concept called sequence of returns risk.
Wait, let's stop and unpack sequence of returns risk. Explain the mechanics of that. How is giving away or losing money at age 65 mathematically different than doing it at age 85?
It is the difference between a minor setback and a fatal blow. If you withdraw large sums of money from your portfolio early in your retirement, say during a year when the stock market happens to be down, you are permanently selling off shares at a low price.
And those shares are gone forever.
Exactly. When the market eventually recovers, your portfolio cannot bounce back because the underlying engine of your wealth, the number of shares you actually own, has been drastically reduced. If you make those same withdrawals 20 years later, the money has had 2 decades to compound and double, making the withdrawals far less impactful.
So by gifting early, you are basically amputating the compounding power of your portfolio.
Yes.
Walk me through how this actually plays out in a family dynamic.
Let's look at a retiree who finishes working with a respectable $800,000 nest egg. They want to be generous. Their daughter is trying to buy a house in a tough market, so they gift her $150,000 for a down payment.
Which is a wonderful, life-changing gesture for the daughter.
A year later, they fully fund their 2 grandchildren's 529 college savings accounts with $80,000. Shortly after that, they lend their son-in-law $40,000 to help float his struggling small business.
Okay, let's add that up. 150 plus 80 plus 40, that is $270,000.
Within 3 years of retiring, they have voluntarily given away 33% of their total liquid wealth.
A third of their money.
And the problem doesn't become visible immediately. It's visible a decade later.
When inflation has driven up their living costs and maybe they've suffered a bear market?
The sources highlight a truly distressing case study of this exact phenomenon. A 74-year-old couple sought out a financial planner in a state of genuine panic. Over the prior 10 years, driven by deep love and a desire to see their family thrive, they had gifted approximately $400,000 across various children and grandchildren.
I'm sure every single check probably felt entirely affordable on the day they wrote it.
But they failed to account for the opportunity cost. The financial planner ran the math. If that $400,000 had remained invested in their moderately conservative portfolio earning a standard historical return, it would have grown to approximately $760,000 by the time they reached 74.
$750,000.
Because they amputated that compounding power early on, their portfolio was now insufficient to cover their own late-stage medical and living expenses. This proud, generous couple was forced to have a devastating conversation about potentially moving into the spare bedrooms of the very children they had spent a decade financially supporting.
Oh man, the generosity was real, the love was pure, but the mathematical reality of inflation and sequence of returns risk simply did not care.
It didn't.
That is absolutely gut-wrenching, and it ties directly into the other side of this family dynamic, which is informal family lending. Because that $40,000 loan you mentioned earlier for the son-in-law's business, the data says that rarely ends well, right?
Our sources draw a massive, bright red line between gifting and lending. A statistical analysis illuminates the risk here. Roughly 57% of people who lend money to family members or close friends report that they are never fully repaid.
More than half. You have better odds at a roulette table.
But the financial loss is secondary to the psychological destruction. When a family member owes you $40,000 and stops making payments, it fundamentally rewires the relationship.
It just becomes this silent, toxic presence in the room. You sit down for Thanksgiving dinner and you aren't looking at your son-in-law. You are looking at the guy who took your 40 grand and just pulled up in a brand new leased SUV.
Exactly. You lose the capital and you simultaneously destroy the family harmony you were trying to protect by making the loan in the first place.
That's a huge psychological toll.
You tell yourself a story that the money is safe because it's family, but the reality is that neither the money nor the relationship is secure.
So what's the advice here?
The prescriptive advice is absolute. If you are moved to provide funds to family, make it a clear, no-strings-attached gift that you can mathematically afford to lose forever. If you truly must structure it as a loan, use formal, legally binding promissory notes with a stated interest rate and rigid repayment terms. A handshake deal over the kitchen table is a recipe for disaster.
We need to take a breath here, because up until this point in the deep dive, the mistakes have been highly visible. You can see a depreciating boat rotting in a marina. You can see a $70,000 kitchen. You can literally feel the awkward tension when your son-in-law walks into the room.
But now we transition.
Yeah. As we transition into the next phase of our analysis, we enter what the sources ominously call the showroom's dark arts. These are the most devastating pitfalls on the entire list, and they are completely invisible. They are buried in 140-page legal contracts.
We are entering the realm of complex financial products. We must tread incredibly carefully here because this specific industry is structurally designed to make these products difficult to decipher.
Let's begin with high-fee variable annuities. But before we tear into these, I know you want to make a very clear distinction to avoid confusion. Not all annuities are predatory, right?
That is a vital distinction. A simple, fixed, immediate annuity can be a perfectly rational, highly effective tool. You hand an insurance company a lump sum of cash, and in return, they guarantee you a fixed monthly income for the rest of your life.
Like a pension.
Exactly. It is pure insurance against the risk of outliving your money. We are not criticizing basic fixed annuities.
Okay, so what exactly is a variable annuity with a living benefit rider? Because that sounds like a bunch of financial jargon thrown into a blender just to confuse me.
It essentially is. A variable annuity is a highly complex insurance contract wrapped around mutual fund-like investments called sub-accounts. They are aggressively marketed to retirees as offering the upside of the market with downside protection.
Sounds great on paper.
But the mechanism they use to achieve this is layering fees so deep within a prospectus, which often runs between 100 and 200 pages, that the average consumer has no hope of calculating their true cost.
Let's use a mechanistic metaphor here. It sounds like you are trying to fill a bucket with water. That's your investment returns. But the insurance company has quietly drilled a dozen tiny holes in the bottom of your bucket. What do these holes look like? What are these fees?
You are charged mortality and expense risk fees, administrative fees, underlying investment management fees on the sub-accounts, and hefty fees for those optional riders that provide the supposed guarantees.
And what does that add up to?
When you aggregate these, the average variable annuity drains between 2 and 3.5% of your total account value every single year.
Let's do the devastating math on that leak. Say I put $300,000 of my retirement savings into one of these variable annuities.
At a 3% total fee rate, you are paying $9,000 every single year in internal costs. This isn't a one-time fee. It compounds negatively against your balance every year.
Let's compare that to the alternative. What if I just put that same $300,000 into a standard, boring, low-cost S&P 500 index fund?
Over a 20-year period, assuming a gross market return of 6%, the difference is staggering. A low-cost index fund might charge you 0.1% in fees. The variable annuity is charging 3%.
Which means
Over 2 decades, that high-fee annuity will silently siphon approximately $170,000 out of your portfolio compared to the index fund.
$170,000 evaporated. You didn't lose it in a stock market crash. You didn't make a reckless day trade. It was just quietly pumped out of your account by fees you didn't even understand.
Exactly.
Why on earth are these products pushed so hard by financial advisors?
You have to look at the incentive structure of the person sitting across the desk from you. The advisor who successfully sells you a variable annuity can earn an upfront commission of between 4 and 8% of your total premium.
So on that $300,000 transfer,
The advisor walks away with a commission check of between $12,000 and $24,000 for a single afternoon of work.
and this is where my jaw dropped when reading the source material. Depending on their specific regulatory licensing, they are often legally not required to disclose the exact dollar amount of that commission in plain English to the buyer. How is it legal to $24,000 conflict of interest?
Financial law industry fought very hard to make a regulatory standard known as suitability rather than a strict fiduciary for certain brokers.
Suitability, meaning what?
As long as the product is deemed suitable and regardless of them personally. As the sources pointedly state, sometimes the title financial advisor on a business card just means a commission salesman wearing a nice suit.
Commission sale in a suit. That's right to an product often sold by that exact same person, usually after offering you a free steak dinner at a local steakhouse. Whole life insurance.
Yes. At those seminars is incredibly salesman will know cheap term insurance from your working years has expired. It will suggest that instead of just buying what life insurance could also act as a tax-deferred investment vehicle.
Be your own bank, they say.
Exactly.
It sounds amazing. Tax growth bar against the cash value. But let me stop you because I counter-argue all the time. People use whole life insurance to bypass the estate tax. It's a staple of generational wealth. Why is it a trap for a normal retiree?
Because the ultra-wealthy use highly customized policies inside irrevocable life insurance trusts, orchestrated by a team of estate lawyers and CPAs, specifically to provide liquidity for an estate tax burden that only kicks in when you have tens of millions of dollars.
Okay, so it's a completely different ballgame.
Completely different. For the average retiree with $1 million or $2 million in the bank, it is a catastrophic drag on growth.
Explain the mechanism. Why doesn't it grow?
Because of the commission structure. When you buy a whole life policy, the agent's commission often consumes 50 to 100% of your entire first year's premium.
Wow.
That means your money isn't compounding. It is paying for the salesman's vacation. By the time you factor in the cost of the actual insurance charges and the administrative bloat, the internal rate of return on the cash value of a standard whole life policy often sets at a dismal 1 to 3% for the first decade.
1 to 3%. You are mathematically guaranteed to lose purchasing power to inflation every single year.
Exactly. For the vast majority of retirees, a strategy of utilizing Roth conversions paired with ultra-low-cost index funds is mathematically vastly superior to whole life insurance.
Good to know.
If you are not ultra-high net worth and someone at a free dinner seminar is pitching you whole life as a retirement growth vehicle, they are viewing your nest egg as their harvest.
Run for the exit. Do not eat the steak. Okay, let's pivot to something that feels completely different, but shares the same structural risks of complex contracts: prepaid funeral packages.
This pitfall exploits our deepest anxieties and our desire to protect our loved ones. A retiree will visit a local family-owned funeral home and pay, say, $12,000 up front for a comprehensive prepaid package.
The intention is beautiful. You want to pre-plan everything so that on the worst day of your children's lives, they don't have to make financial decisions or deal with paperwork.
The intention is pure. The risk lies in the massive corporate consolidation currently sweeping the funeral industry.
What happened?
That local family-owned home you trusted is highly likely to be acquired by a massive national conglomerate.
Mega Funeral Corps swoops in and buys the local guy.
When that happens, while your contract might technically remain legally valid, the new corporate management often restructures the specific services, the approved merchandise, or the operational fulfillment of that contract.
Oh, no.
When the time comes, your grieving family is forced to navigate a labyrinth of corporate red tape and bureaucratic hurdles just to force the successor company to honor the original spirit of the agreement.
You paid $12,000 to spare your family from paperwork, and you inadvertently purchased a legal nightmare for them.
Precisely. And that brings us to the final dark art, which is perhaps the most visceral exploitation of our biology: luxury anti-aging treatments.
This is the literal monetization of mortality anxiety. You retire, you finally have time to sit and think, and you become acutely aware that your body is aging. And right on cue, the showroom pivots from selling you boats to selling you youth.
The clinics emerge, pitching localized stem cell therapies, intravenous vitamin infusions, hyperbaric chambers, and proprietary supplement stacks that cost $400 a month.
Now, we aren't talking about actual medicine here, right?
This is a crucial distinction made in the source material. We are not talking about evidence-based preventative medicine. Regular cardiovascular screenings, physical therapy, or medications prescribed by a board-certified physician after a clinical evaluation are very important.
So what are we talking about?
We are talking about highly expensive experimental treatments that are in a regulatory gray area. They operate in the shadows of FDA.
And do they even work?
The evidence base for many of these luxury treatments is scientifically thin to nearly non-existent. The prices are not based on measured health outcomes or research and development costs.
What are they based on then?
They are priced based entirely on what a frightened, affluent retiree is willing to pay for the feeling of doing something about their aging. It is a biological showroom.
Wow. So we have walked through the major categories of pitfalls. We've seen the real estate traps, the depreciating toys, the dangers of family gifting, and the invisible drain of complex financial products.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. But to truly comprehend how devastating this is, we need to see how these individual mistakes compound in the real world. We need to meet Gerald.
Gerald is the central case study provided by the sources. He is a composite character built from thousands of real-world actuarial profiles, but his sequence of events plays out every single day across the country.
Okay, let's establish Gerald's baseline. He retired at age 64 after a solid career in logistics management. He did everything right. He delayed gratification.
He did. He entered retirement with $900,000 in a 401k. He owned a home outright worth $400,000 with no mortgage. And he was scheduled to collect $2,400 a month in Social Security.
By any conventional financial metric, Gerald has won the game. He is in the top tier of retirement readiness. He should be completely immune to financial stress.
Yet within his first 30 months of retirement, walked in different shows and said yes.
Oh, Gerald. Let's track the sequence of his decisions and the mechanical destruction of his wealth. We will begin what we haven't even analyzed yet, the franchise investment.
The siren song of being a small business owner, but suppose without the risk.
Gerald was looking for purpose and income. He was seduced by the marketing of a business in a box, an established brand, proven operational systems, a guaranteed pathway to success. He invested $120,000 of his liquid capital to open a service-based franchise during his second year of retirement.
The sources dive deep into the mechanics of franchise documents. Franchisors only show you court in their marketing materials.
So it's misleading.
They suffer from massive survivorship bias. You do not see the failure rate. Gerald worked relentlessly, but the local market dynamics did not support the model. 18 months after opening, he was forced out of the business. He managed to cover $70,000 by liquidating his equipment and asset.
So he absorbed a $50,000 cash loss. But worse than that, he spent a year and a half of his absolute prime early retirement working sour wheat, immense stress for his pay.
He lost $50,000 irreplaceable capital and 26 months of irreplaceable time. Following that stress, Gerald sought a safer, more tangible place to put his money. He fell into the collectibles trap, specifically rare coins.
This pitch is so dangerous because it appeals to their brain. It's like a hawk. but as a value ahead against inflation.
But the mechanics of the collectible market rely entirely on expertise. The dealers the coins exactly worth on the wholesale market. Gerald, an amateur, does not.
So what did Gerald do?
Gerald spent $60,000 building a portfolio of rare coins.
Did he at least buy gold?
He did, but he didn't understand the difference between the spot price of the underlying precious metal and the arbitrary numismatic premium attached to the coin's supposed rarity. He paid 30 to 40% above the actual spot price of the gold.
When he could have just opened a brokerage account and bought a gold ETF that tracks the commodity perfectly for a 0.1% fee?
Exactly. 3 years liquidated, sold the collection back through an estate dealer. Because he had overpaid the numismatic on the front end and absorbed the dealer's margin on the back end, $39,000.
A $21 loss, pure as he decided to play a high-stakes game against professionals who control the mechanism.
Now let's tally total mathematical damage of Gerald's 30 months, encompassing all 6 mistakes made.
Okay, I've got the calculator reviewed.
First on, he was variable by a commissioner. Growth, opportunity of high-fee product versus a cost index fund over amounted to a $2,000 structural loss.
He'd silently drain a leaky bucket of internal fees.
The franchise failure was a hard net loss of $50,000. The rare cost him $21,000.
Puts us at $163,000 gone. What else?
He also made the real estate mistake. He moved for benefits, but failed to model the uncapped tax reset and the skyrocketing premiums. Compared to his initial spreadsheet budget, those structural overruns cost him an additional $62,000 over 8 years.
Another $62,000. We are at $225,000.
He informally lent $40,000 to a family member for a real estate venture that went bankrupt. The money was never repaid.
Yikes.
And finally, his prepaid funeral contract required $8,000 of legal and administrative remediation after the local home was absorbed by a corporate chain.
Okay, adding those final blows. 92 plus 50 plus 21 plus 62 plus 40 plus 8. That is a mathematically documented loss of $273,000.
Over $250,000 of liquid wealth. Erratic.
And here's profound, terrifying insight of this entire analysis. Gerald was not an idiot. He didn't take $200,000 to Las Vegas. He didn't day trade risky cryptocurrency on his own.
No, he didn't.
Every single one of those 6 decisions, buying an annuity for safety, franchise for income, buying gold as a hedge, moving to Florida for taxes, every single one looked like a perfectly reasonable, prudent choice on the day he sat in the showroom and said yes. He was systematically dismantled by an economy structurally designed to harvest the wealth he spent 40 years building.
That is the tragedy. Gerald is 65 years old. He is not living on the streets, but his financial reality is materially, permanently constrained. He lives with a background hum of financial anxiety that he absolutely did not deserve and did not need to experience.
So how do we stop this? How do you, the listener, ensure that you do not become Gerald? How do you walk through this transition safely?
This brings us to the final section of the source material, the defense framework.
Okay, I'm taking notes.
The data provides a highly specific, easily applicable 3-level defensive strategy that you must deploy before you sign any contract or transfer any funds. The framework consists of 3 sequential questions. You must ask them in this exact order.
Level 1?
Level 1, what is the true all-in annual cost of ownership? We aren't talking about the sticks or the monthly payment. Those are showroom numbers.
You must calculate the hidden mechanics. What is the annual maintenance? What are the property taxes? What is the specialized insurance?
And most importantly, what is the opportunity cost of the deployed capital? If you take $200,000 out of the market to buy a boat, you aren't just losing $200, you're $14,000 a year that money would have reliably generated if left invested.
Answering that single question with brutal honesty instantly eliminates the boat and the vacation home for the vast majority of people. Okay, level 2.
Level 2. What is my realistic usage rate? The behavioral psychologists who contributed to the sources advise a very specific, aggressive approach here. Whatever your optimistic, rosy projection is for how often you will use this item, Cut it entirely in half.
So if I build a spreadsheet that says I will use the RV 10 weekends a year, I have to physically cross that out and run the math based on 5 weekends.
Precisely. And then you ask yourself, does this massive capital outlay still make mathematical sense if I do it 5 times? If a purchase only makes sense at your absolute maximum, most optimistic usage rate, it is a structural failure waiting to happen. Do not buy it.
I love the mechanics of that. Cut the dream in half and see if it survives the math. And finally, level 3.
Level 3. Who profits from me making this decision? This is your ultimate defense against the invisible traps, the financial products, and complex contracts. You must trace the incentive structure.
If the person sitting across the mahogany desk from you, presenting the variable annuity or the whole life insurance policy, earns a commission directly tied to your purchase, they are structurally misaligned with your best interests.
Essential to note, this doesn't mean they are an e-person. It simply means that their financial incentive is to sell you the product that pays them the highest commission, not the product that serves your portfolio the best.
So how do you get unbiased advice?
The only reliable defense against this is to seek a second opinion from a fee-only fiduciary. This is a professional project. You pay a flat hourly rate or a flat project fee to evaluate your math, and who is legally bound to act in your best interest? Because they earn absolutely zero commission from whatever product you choose, their advice is uncompromised by the showroom.
To really drive the power of this defense framework home, let's walk through the exact mechanism of the Monte Carlo reality check provided in the sources. This shows how incredibly fast the math breaks down when you ignore these 3 rules.
A Monte Carlo simulation is a computational stress test. Institutional retirement planners use it to run thousands of randomized market return scenarios to find the statistical probability that your money will survive your lifespan.
Let's establish a baseline.
A retiree has $600,000 in investments. They are drawing down $26,400 a year to live on. That is a withdrawal rate of 4.4%.
Which is safe. That is right in the pocket of the conventional 4% rule. The money should easily last 30 years.
It is statistically very safe. But then, in year 1 of retirement, they succumb to the showroom. They ignore the level 1 defense and buy a vacation home. They put $200,000 down from their savings, and they finance the rest. The annual carrying cost taxes, insurance, HOA are $14,000, and the mortgage payments are $11,000.
So they have just violently added $25,000 a year in hard structural costs to their baseline existence.
Yes. They are now forced to pull an additional $25,000 from their remaining savings every single year just to float the carrying costs of the vacation home. Their withdrawal rate hasn't just crept up, it has effectively doubled.
And what happens when you run that through the Monte Carlo thousands of times? What does the stress test reveal?
The institutional models flag this new plan as catastrophic. The simulation shows that by taking that initial lump sum out and doubling the ongoing withdrawal rate, this retiree now faces a greater than 60% probability of going entirely broke before they reach age 85.
Over a 60% chance of complete financial ruin before age 85, just because they bought a lake house. That is terrifying.
They took the very capital that was mathematically required to protect their late-stage survival, and they converted it into an expensive, depreciating luxury.
So what is the ultimate takeaway here? If the math says I can't buy the lake house, and I can't buy the boat, and I can't buy the RV, what do I do with this desire?
The sources offer a brilliantly simple piece of advice to bypass the trap entirely. Rent the symbol.
Rent the symbol. Let's unpack that.
To understand that, we have to look past the physical objects and recognize what the showroom is actually selling. They are not selling wood, fiberglass, or real estate. They are selling symbols of arrival.
They are selling the emotional payoff deferred for 4 decades. The boat isn't a boat. It's a symbol of freedom. The country club isn't a golf course. It's a symbol of community and belonging. The vacation home is a symbol of having a sanctuary that proves you succeeded.
But the profound realization embedded in the behavioral research is that the feeling of the symbol can be acquired without absorbing the crippling financial liability of ownership. The feeling of the lake house, the sunsets, the grandkids jumping off the dock, the morning coffee, that exact feeling can be rented for $4,000 a week.
And when the plumbing explodes at 3 in the morning, you don't call a contractor, you call the owner and go back to sleep.
Exactly. Belonging can be found in a community organization or a public league without transferring $50,000 to a country club. Freedom on the water can be chartered for a weekend.
The core mathematical and psychological lesson is that owning the symbol is always, without exception, infinitely more expensive than simply renting the underlying experience.
Internalizing that distinction is the ultimate psychological armor.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We have deconstructed the mechanics of the showroom. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to remind you, the listener, of one fundamental truth. The 40-year delayed gratification program you ran, it wasn't a mistake.
It served you incredibly well.
It built your wealth. And throwing that hard-earned discipline away just because a commissioned salesperson or a cultural narrative suddenly tells you it's time to enjoy it is the ultimate trap. You do not have to say yes to the showroom.
And we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, one that expands beyond your individual portfolio and looks at the implications of this data on a massive scale. Roughly 10,000 Americans turn 65 every single day.
10,000 people every 24 hours crossing the finish line.
And the exact same salespeople, utilizing the exact same showrooms we just analyzed, are waiting for them at the exact same dinner seminars, pitching the exact same 140-page contracts, selling the exact same depreciating symbols. It makes you wonder about the macroeconomic impact of this wealth extraction.
It really does. If 10,000 people a day are retiring and billions upon billions of dollars are being systematically funneled out of their secure nest eggs and into rotting fiberglass boats, failed franchises, and exorbitant insurance commissions, what happens to the broader economy in 20 years?
What happens when an entire generation actually needs capital for late-stage care, and it is all tied up, it evaporates?
It's a systemicity much larger than any single retiree. We are looking at an environment where the diagnostic X-ray machine is fundamentally broken, and you are surrounded by peaceably